A Just Us League by Sandia Zukar. A Batman all media types fanfic rated for general audiences. With additional tags for mild hurt comfort, fluff and hurt comfort, protective Robin, protective Dick Grayson, brotherly affection, big brother and little brother, Your Honor, that's his best friend, that's bro. Summary. Batman is injured while working with the newly formed Justice League, and as his best friend and partner, Robin has some big feelings about it. I've alerted Batman's next of kin to the situation. There's a hint of nervousness in Superman's voice as he closes the door to the hall's medical bay behind him. He's on his way. He should be here within the hour. Batman's stable. The medicine I administered seems to be helping, but he insisted on coming anyway, just to be sure for himself. Next of kin? Flash asks. Batman seems like the loner type. Do you mean to tell me the guy has people? Not to test your judgment or anything, but do you think it's a good idea to invite people here during a time like this? Are they civilians? Robin, Superman clarifies. I called Robin. While they knew of Robin, only a few of them had ever actually interacted with the boy. Most of them had never even seen him in person, only through newsreels and blurry images in the papers. They didn't know what he, or Batman, looked like underneath their masks. They didn't even have names to put to said masked faces. I know it's a vulnerable time. We should work on a real protocol for what to do when one of us gets injured like this, who we should alert. But Robin is Batman's partner. I thought he shouldn't be left out of the loop about this. No one has any objections. Even if they did, nobody wants to object to Superman's decision. It takes less than an hour for Robin to arrive, announced by the sound of his speeding bike. He only narrowly avoids running right into the hall's front doors, bike skidding to a halt inches away from the glass. No one can get outside fast enough to greet him before he's stomping his way into the hall. Where's Batman? The boy's voice echoes off the walls as he stomps in the direction of the group of heroes gathered in the foyer. Superman steps forward, holding out a hand in acknowledgement. Robin, where is Batman? He's in the medbay. Where? Down the hall to the right. I'll show you. Superman offers. Robin is already marching ahead of him, anger radiating off the boy in waves, so thick it made the air tense. Does he seem a little bit angry to anyone else? Green Lantern asks, watching Superman trail after the boy. Out of curiosity, he follows. The others shuffle after him, all still keeping their distance from Robin and Superman. The group watches as Robin stomps through the doors of the medbay, leaving Superman lingering outside. Maybe Superman starts, but doesn't get to finish as the door swings open again, only a moment after Robin had just walked through them. What the hell did you guys do to him? The boy's tone is sharp and accusatory, as he all but stomps to the group of huddled heroes in the hallway. He turns his sharp gaze on Superman. You said he was injured. He's covered in blood and passed out on the bed. Superman puts his hands up in defense as Robin points an accusatory finger at him. His condition is stable, Robin. We administered painkillers. They were pretty strong. He's sleeping them off. We did our best, but... Your best? You guys couldn't even take off his suit. He's sitting in his uniform, covered in his own blood. Will he even remember what happened, or who he is when he wakes up? Robin, you've been at this longer than most of us. Superman attempts to reason with the boy. You know that injury is inevitable in this line of work, even for me. Robin rests his hands on his hips. Is that supposed to make me feel better? Injury is inevitable? I got here and you guys were all twiddling your thumbs. No one even bothered to wait in the room with him. We were waiting for you, Flash supplies, to which Robin turns his sharp gaze on the man. For a guy with super speed, you lack a sense of urgency. Robin. Superman's voice is stern, but the boy doesn't flinch. Let's worry about Batman, okay? Oh, now you're worried about him. He's our friend. Everyone's worried about him. Superman gently ushers the boy back towards the doors of the hall's medical ward. Robin goes, only because he's concerned about Batman. Had he less pressing matters, he'd stay and argue Flash down about his apparent inability to use powers when Batman was in danger. Superman's hand rested on Robin's shoulder, only to be immediately slapped away by the boy as he makes his way back to Batman. With Robin now able to get a better look at him, he feels his previous anger over Batman's status was entirely justified. There's still wet blood staining Batman's right shoulder, soaking through the fabric of his suit. There's also wet blood along Batman's jaw, and a sharp line along the opening of his cowl. The blood itself is coming from somewhere underneath the cowl, Robin observes. He's still bleeding, he hisses through gritted teeth. Although it's not loud, Robin knows Superman can hear him just fine from the private room's doorway. None of his major arteries are damaged, Superman supplies. I can't even look through his cowl, but I can scan everything else, to the best of my ability. He was hit in the back of the head, but the helmet took the brunt of the damage. Robin keeps his gloved hands clenched into fists at his sides to stop them from trembling. You can't be so sure. His helmet is pretty tough, but that doesn't mean it's impossible for anything to hurt him. I need to get a better look, just to be sure. I need to take the cowl off. The boy lifts one of his hands from his side, reaching over to feel for the tightened clasp of the cowl. He hooks his fingers in the latch and pauses, turning to Superman. Turn around, Superman. I don't want you looking. But I've seen... What, now you want to mind his business? Not earlier, when you could have given him a heads up or something? Robin snaps. Turn around. Superman turns around with a sheepish nod, mumbling an apology and putting his back to the boy. With the slightest hint of relief, Robin pulls at the clasps of the mask with his fingers. The cowl loosens, and Robin quickly removes the helmet, cursing under his breath at the jagged rip in the back of the cowl, and the inside being smeared with blood. Superman was right. The helmet did take the brunt of the attack, but it wasn't enough to stop whatever it was that hit Batman in the back of his head from doing some damage to his scalp. There was blood in the roots of Bruce's hair, staining his scalp. From one of the pockets of his utility belt, Robin retrieves an extra domino mask. He carefully slips it onto Bruce's face, concealing Bruce's identity to the best of his ability. I need gauze and disinfectant. Robin looks over his shoulder at Superman. Grab that for me, will you? I'm gonna clean this up as much as possible while he's out. It's gonna hurt less if he can't feel it. I don't think it's deep enough for stitches, but it needs to be cleaned up either way. Superman shuffles around the room, retrieving supplies from a few cabinets and drawers and handing them to Robin. The boy makes quick work of getting the area around the wound clean and bandaging a few pads of gauze against Bruce's head to stop the blood flow. Check him again, Robin commands. Make sure there's nothing fatal. The wound isn't deep. Superman's eyes glow with a soft white. It just looks worse than it is. Good. Robin gently rests Bruce's head back down against the stained pillow of the medical bed. The pair of them fall into momentary silence. Robin's brow remains furrowed. Superman fiddles with the edge of his cape as he checks Bruce over, then checks again, just to be sure. After a while, Robin's voice breaks the silence. Was it preventable? What? The injury, was it preventable, Superman? Was it something you could have seen coming, if you had been on the lookout? Superman lets his own hands fall to his sides. I suppose so, if I had been watching. Then why weren't you? Why weren't any of you? You guys are supposed to be a team, and you're telling me no one had his back? That's like the first rule of teamwork. I know. Superman takes a deep breath. We could have been more careful. Accidents can be prevented, but this one wasn't. I'm afraid we're still learning. You've been in the game longer than most of us, you know? Robin's scowl fades into a frown. You all could stand to be more aware. My partner is out of the ring, and now I have no one to watch my back. Batman and Robin are a team. You understand that, right? I need him, and he needs me, and now this is throwing a wrench in our plans. I know, Superman says again, and I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be careful. Robin stands upright, turning to face Superman. Be alert. Watch his back the same way we both know he'd be watching yours. You can move at the speed of light. You're invincible. So many of you would have been able to take that hit and walk away fine. Why wasn't it any of you? Robin. No, don't even answer that. Just help me get him back to Gotham. I can keep a better eye on him there. The computer in the Batcave is already equipped to monitor his health, and I'm sure he'd be more comfortable there than here anyway. Superman hesitates for a second, but with a pointed look from Robin, he scoops Bruce's limp body up into his arms. He lifts his feet off the ground, hovering to prevent jostling Bruce too much by walking. Together, the trio make their way out of the medical ward. The rest of the League remain standing out in the hallway, giving the group curious glances. Superman is going to bring Batman back to Gotham, Robin informs. He'll get better a lot sooner in my care. And Superman's going to fill in for Batman in the meantime. I am? You are. Robin's hands rest on his hips, which means he won't be around to keep the rest of you in order. Which is unfortunate, because your lack of order is what caused this mess in the first place. So, work on it. And try not to get each other killed. Batman has me, but who do you have? Who's Superman gonna call when your ass is bleeding out in a hospital bed? It's rhetorical, but he wouldn't have waited for an answer anyways. He only motions for Superman to follow him as he marches out into the hall. So, are we just gonna stand here and take shit from a kid? Flash asks. The group only gets an apologetic look from Superman before he follows after Robin. Batman cradled in his arms. Do you want me to stay? Clark asks. There's a bed in the Batcave, shoved away in a hidden-from-view nook that's a little too sterile. Probably the room where Bruce does things like perform surgery on himself. Clark thinks to himself, without a hint of doubt in his mind. Bruce was the kind of determined man who would solve his own complicated issues in complicated ways. It's no wonder, to Clark at least, why Robin had demanded Batman be brought back to Gotham. Across the room, Robin aggressively drags a small rolling desk out from the corner. The laptop in his hands is slammed down onto the desk with a sharp clunk that makes Clark wince as he sets the bat cowl on the bed beside him. He'd be worried for the laptop if he didn't already know how durable Batman's personal tech was. You can go. Robin waves dismissively as he pries open the laptop. His vitals are already being tracked by the bat computer. Alfred is already on his way down, and he'll help me out with anything I might have missed, even though I know I've got everything under control. Well, do you need anything? I don't. Robin looks up from the glowing screen of the laptop. Just keep an eye out for the bat signal, okay? If you see it, be on standby, just in case I need an extra set of hands. I'll be seeing you, then? Clark gives one last glance at Bruce's body, resting on the medical bed in the middle of the room, then leaves. He knows not to take Robin's huff of annoyance and mumbled, finally, personally. Robin pulls up the cave's security camera feeds, watching the blur of blue and red on the screen as Clark exits the cave. Only then, when he's sure Clark is gone, does he peel his domino mask off, wincing as the adhesive tugs at his skin. He rubs at the residue the domino mask left on his skin, which turns into rubbing at his eyes when the warmth of fresh tears begins to trickle down his cheeks. His face feels hot, a rush of frustration and embarrassment overtaking him now that he's in the comfort of his own company. He was the boy wonder. He shouldn't be sitting here crying over Bruce getting injured. It was understood, and never underspoken, that injury was guaranteed. The dangers of their job was never something Bruce glossed over. He always made sure Dick remembered that either of them could be hurt, or worse. He often snapped at Dick for seemingly not taking their job seriously enough, while simultaneously doing everything in his power to make sure Dick always came out of their nightly escapades relatively unscathed. If only Bruce had drilled those same lessons into his team. If they could even be called that. Maybe then Dick wouldn't be out a partner in the middle of a case. The thought makes Dick huff. He wouldn't let Bruce down like the Justice League had. He won't go back out as Robin tonight. He knows he already lost the lead he was following when Superman had summoned him to DC. It would be pointless to try and pick up where he'd left off nearly 4 hours prior. The men he was chasing would have already gotten away and left Gotham if they were as smart as past collected evidence made them out to be. Organizing what little data he was able to collect tonight, as well as the past week's worth of recordings and case notes, would be slow and tedious. It was always Dick's least favorite part of their job, something he usually shunted over to Alfred to take care of, just to avoid doing the task himself. But if he could knock it out of the way tonight, it would make things a hell of a lot easier for Bruce upon awakening. Dick gives his eyes one last wipe with the back of his hand, and swallows down the lump in his throat. He can do that. For Bruce. Unlike everyone else, he can be a good teammate. He's midway through transcribing one of Batman's audio files when an old memory crawls into his mind, possibly prompted by Bruce's current predicament. Once, when Dick had been a small child, he had come down with an awful stomach bug. It started off as a mere stomach ache, preventing him from eating breakfast, and progressed into feeling feverish with a stomach that refused to settle as the day went on. When it came time to rehearse that night's show, little Dick had climbed the tall ladder to his platform, looked down at the world around him and found it spinning at a dizzying pace, and had promptly thrown up all over himself. He felt awful. His tummy hurt. His head was pounding, and he felt hot and cold at the same time. He had burst into tears, suddenly afraid and unsure of what he was supposed to do. Thankfully, his father had scrambled up the ladder to retrieve him, and once he was back on the ground, his mother was at his side instantly, fussing over her baby boy. They'd cut the Flying Grayson's act for that night's show, due to Dick's inability to perform. His parents had taken Dick back to their tent, cleaned him up, and tucked him into bed, and had refused to leave his side unless it was necessary. Dick could have sworn he was dying by the time the sun had set. He'd hurled over and over until his stomach was empty and his head felt like it was going to explode from all the strain on his muscles. He was positive he'd puked and cried and sweated out every last drop of water in his body, and every single muscle hurt. His saving grace had been his parents, his mother brushing his sweat-damp curls away from his forehead, leaving gentle kisses in their wake, and promising him it would be over soon, and he would feel better when the sun came up in the morning. His father sitting on the edge of his bed, cuddling him close to his strong chest, and looking as if he wished he could take all of his son's pain away from him. It had provided Dick with the comfort he very much needed in such an uncomfortable situation. He knew now that viruses typically went away on their own, but that wouldn't stop him from believing their love is what chased the bug away, and had him back on his feet just 2 days later. The memory tugs at Dick's heartstrings and makes him cringe at the same time. He'd felt totally gross, all sick and sweaty, but he'd also felt loved by his parents fussing over him. He'd give anything to have that again. He wondered if Bruce would feel the same when he woke up. Would he wish his parents were around to comfort him as his injuries healed? Would he, too, think of kisses on the forehead and strong, safe arms? Did Bruce ever find a sense of security in something else, the way Dick had found security in Bruce after the loss of his parents? The sound of the bed creaking draws Dick's attention to Bruce. In the bed, Bruce stirs, sending the cowl rolling off the fitted sheet and clattering onto the floor. Hurriedly, Dick slips off his stool and rushes to the side of the bed. "Bruce? You waking up?" Bruce doesn't respond. His eyes remain closed, even as his face twists into a grimace. Dick lays a concerned hand on his shoulder. It takes a moment, but slowly, Bruce relaxes, returning to his previous state of rest. "That's it." Bruce pats his shoulder. "Take it easy, Bruce. I know it probably hurts like hell, but you're in much better hands now, Bruce. Much better." You'll be okay, yeah? What was it his mother had said to him when he'd been ill all those years ago? You'll feel better by tomorrow morning. When Dick had been so convinced he was meeting his end. It had brought him comfort, even if his proposed end was just a stomach bug. But Dick couldn't promise Bruce would feel better anytime soon. So he settled for carefully brushing Bruce's hair away from his forehead, trying not to grimace at the blood that tracks on his green gloves. He picks the only spot on Bruce's forehead not smeared with blood and plants a gentle kiss. Childish as it may be, it brings him comfort. He learned the hard way that broken bones can't be kissed better, nor can concussions, or extreme blood loss, or the thought behind the gesture has to count for something. What else is he to do? His partner is out of commission. Batman is all Robin has, and Dick sure as hell doesn't see anyone else trying to make things better. They couldn't even prevent things from getting this bad in the first place. At the very least, he could pretend a kiss on the forehead can lessen the impact of the pounding headache Bruce is sure to wake up with. There's enough space on the bed for Dick to clamber up and sit next to Bruce, if he makes himself small enough. He tucks his gangly limbs close to him and plants himself shoulder to shoulder with Bruce. I'll stay here with you, buddy. Just a few minutes, okay? Okay, good. The promised few minutes turns into nearly 2 hours. When Alfred finds them, Dick is dozing, tucked against Bruce's side. He stirs when the butler enters the room, offering a sleepy wave. I was beginning to wonder why you hadn't come upstairs, Alfred says. Got distracted, Alf. I can see. Young master, if you'd like to rest, I'm sure your own bed would be much more comfortable. But Bruce is resting, and you should too, in a proper bed. I'm sure you're winded after hashing it out with the Justice League. A blush creeps onto Dick's face. You heard about that? I did. Master Kent rang. He wanted to double-check that you two were all right, but he hadn't wanted to come back to the Batcave, lest he encroach on Robin's territory. He did mention you were rather upset with Justice League. Yeah, well, Dick slips off the bed, stretching. I got Bruce back into better hands. Our hands. Superman wouldn't call me to DC if he didn't know I could handle the situation better than they could. Obviously, Bruce is my partner anyway. I need him here in Gotham more than anyone else needs him anywhere else. What you need, young sir, is a proper meal and to head to bed. I left a meal for you in the kitchen. Please do not let it grow cold. Okay, Alf, I'm going. You'll come get me when he wakes up? I'll come get you when you've had an adequate amount of sleep. Well, then maybe I should stay. Alfred points him towards the door, with a shake of his head. You may have a few years over the Justice League, but I have been looking after Master Bruce for nearly 30 years. I can assure you, he is in great hands and will be fine. But I won't have to do that, because you already know that. Now, if you don't mind... Dick lets out a defeated sigh and heads for the exit. He's quick to change out of his uniform and make his way up the long staircase. It's not until he's sitting in front of his dinner in the kitchen that he realizes how hungry he was. And it's not until he's made it to his room, after scarfing down dinner, that he allows himself to acknowledge that he is tired. The manor seems awfully quiet tonight, and Dick isn't sure he likes it. Usually, Alfred would drag the pair of them out of the cave when the clock has ticked past a certain hour, insisting that some amount of rest was needed for the following day's civilian activities. And even then, removed from their suits and gadgets, the pair would extend their crusades. They'd bring their work upstairs, despite Alfred's wishes, often in the form of sitting in one another's rooms, talking incessantly about their latest case. Tonight, it was just Dick. The following night consists of Dick racing down to the Batcave to check on Bruce, who was still sleeping, then gearing up as Robin to attempt to pick up where he had left off with the gang he'd been stalking out the previous evening. Before leaving with the Justice League, Batman had instructed him to stake out from a distance. Listen, gather info, but not to engage unless absolutely necessary. It was slow and boring work, but it would prevent Robin from getting into any situation where he may need Batman's backup, while Bruce was hours away on business. He returns to the site of the previous night's stakeout to find the rooftop just as dark and quiet as it was yesterday, and the abandoned building across the street dormant of any secret gang meetups. Just about every known hideout and not-so-secret meetup spot is empty, too. The city is unusually quiet, and Robin isn't sure if that's relieving or alarming. But it gets him back to the Batcave with a lot less to worry about, aside from Bruce, that is. After just a few hours, Robin's bike putters back into the main chamber of the Batcave. It's quiet. The only signs of anyone having been in the cave at all tonight is the running computer and the plate beside the keyboard, hosting a simple peanut butter and jelly sandwich, a post-patrol snack left out by Alfred, which Robin silently thanks him for. He pulls the flash drive out of his pocket recorder and plugs it into the back computer to let the files auto-copy, grabs the sandwich, and heads to the medical room to check up on Bruce. Much to his surprise, Bruce is awake and sitting up in bed. He hardly has time to brace himself when Dick launches himself across the room and onto the bed to engulf him in a one-arm tug. The entire bed shakes and rattles when Dick lands on Bruce, and despite the pain of his injuries, he instinctively wraps an arm around the boy and keeps him from toppling off the bed. "Alfred didn't tell me you were awake." "Just woke up," Bruce grunts, loosening his hold on Dick as the bed settles. "Alfred went upstairs not too long ago. I'm fine, I think. How did I get here? I don't remember." "Superman brought you here. I asked him to. You were out cold, so you wouldn't know." Dick sits cross-legged on the mattress beside Bruce. He uses his free hand to grab Bruce by the front of his uniform, yanking him closer to inspect the bandage around Bruce's head. He hasn't bled through the latest round of bandages, which means the wound must have stopped bleeding. Satisfied, Dick lets him go. "You got whacked over the head, man. Sure does feel like it. And your team did a real piss-poor job of cleaning you up after." Robin huffs and takes another bite of his sandwich, still held in his other hand. How it managed to not get crushed in the commotion is beyond him. "Alfred did tell me you had a few choice words for the Justice League about that." "Well," Dick pauses briefly to swallow a chunk of sandwich in his mouth. "They deserved it. You'd have my head if I was fooling around and not watching your back, and you got hurt. It's like they don't even know you." "They don't," Bruce confirms. "They're still learning. The Justice League is a much bigger team than Batman and Robin. We could stand to be better prepared, but that still takes training and dedication. At least Clark was smart enough to call me, and I know you well enough to know you'd rather be home than in D.C., here with Alfred and me, instead of the rest of them." "Really? What makes you so sure?" Bruce shifts on the bed to lay back down against the pillows. The brief movement makes his head throb and muscles ache. "Well, look at you. You're laying down. I bet you'd have tried to get up and insist everything was fine if you'd woken up in the Hall of Justice. You like hiding out in the Batcave better than anywhere else to lick your wounds. And you like your computer and equipment better than anyone else's. It's more secure. I know, because I know you. And because you're like me. I would want the same too. But you already know that." Dick is correct, though Bruce isn't entirely surprised. If anyone were to know any of this, it ought to be his partner. The one person he can count on to save him from the awkwardness of waking up in a room full of acquaintances, who could see him at his most vulnerable, or, worse, to try and talk to him. "Well, since you know so much, why don't you tell me how much morphine will keep me awake but chase off some of this pain?" "I'll have to check to see if Alfred has already given you anything first, and then we can work out a decent dosage." Dick scoots over to the edge of the bed, allowing Bruce more room to lay back down. His eyes wander down to the remaining half of the sandwich in his hand. "Have you eaten yet?" Not yet. Alfred went upstairs to take care of something. He promised me he'd bring me down something later, but I could go for something much sooner. Preferably sooner. Without a second thought, Bruce hands over the leftover half of his sandwich. Eat that for now. I'll go tell Alfred that you're in need of a real meal. Will that be complete with a lecture about how he should have known I was hungry, and he should have had food prepared before I even woke up? Bruce asks, playfully, around the bite of the snack. Dick's shoulders slump. Are you gonna tease me forever? For standing up for you? You won't be laughing someday when the roles are reversed. And Dick, again, is right. Many years later, Batman gets a call from the Titans. Nightwing has been severely injured. How could you let this happen? Batman snaps as he prowls through the halls of the Titans' tower to see for himself what has become of his best friend. Why wasn't anyone watching his back? Notes. I just wanted to write Dick getting snappy with the Justice League over Bruce, because he's Batman's ride or die. It started as a silly Tumblr post, but spiraled into a little more. I don't think I've ever actually written Dick Grayson before outside of a roleplay setting, but even then it was fairly minimal. In getting back into Robin this time, I'm really stuck on the idea of him and Bruce being more like brothers than father and son, because it just appeals to me more than all the daddy Batman stuff we've been spoon-fed from DC. I hope you like it, and if you don't, well, just pretend that you did, or I will drop 9 million billion anvils on you. And once again, I try to leave kudos, and AO3 cockblocks me. I'm not allowed to leave extra. Sorry, I've already left them here. Bestie, if your music is loud enough from the road for me to hear it from my window, it's too loud. My window's not even open. Sir. Fun fact, all head wounds look worse than they are. They just bleed a lot. There's just, like, a lot of blood in your head. So any type of head wound will look a lot worse than it actually is. Because there's just a lot there.